I like looking at boxes of food and all this all natural, organic, vegan, keto, paleo. If you look at those food boxes, they almost all of them have this list of no food, no eggs, no dairy, no nuts, free of this, free of that. And I'm like, yeah, that's wonderful, but like, what are you?
This is Intentionally Ever After. Join intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek for a series of personal conversations and coaching sessions with various people about how living with intention shows up for them.
Greetings, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Intentionally Ever After. Today, I am very excited to reconnect with my dear friend, Mr. Andrew Weber. Andrew, welcome.
Thanks, Joe. It's good to be here.
Yeah, good to have you here. Andrew, will you kindly introduce yourself?
Yes, I will. I'm Andrew Weber, as Joe just said. I'm a Unitarian Universalist minister. That's my sort of professional training and grounding. Joe and I connected in a gym where I've also done some fitness coaching, running, CrossFit, that sort of training and just physical fitness. So we cross paths not in the spiritual religious sector, but in the fitness sector, which I find both to be very parallel. I just jump right in. I mean, that's the minister. It's like, I'm just going to jump in because these are both self-betterment. And so I like to coach people and to help people grow into the best selves. That's my sort of professional and personal introduction. I live in Newark, in the same area as Joe, and I have 2 kids and a lovely wife whom I live with, and that's very briefly who I am. Like very, very. That's the abridged, the short version.
Yeah, it touches on a good bit of stuff, though. It's like you've practiced that before.
Yeah, I've had some practice to say who I am quickly in front of people.
Yeah. So, what does it mean to you to live intentionally?
Well, funny you should ask. Joe and I actually reconnected. I was out on a run, and we crossed paths. I'm like, who was that? Was that someone I knew? I was like, as a mask. We were both running in opposite directions. It was Joe, and then he reached out and said, "I want you to be on my podcast about living intentionally." And my first thought was, oh my gosh, this is exactly what this is my calling too. My calling, we were just talking about this, is to ask people essentially, what's your faith? What's your religious belief? What's your core of being? What keeps your flame lit? Not really like the label you hold. I mean, that's important, but to say your theological core belief, what you hold as most dear, and then how do you live that? That's my whole thing. It's like, yes, that's great that this is your identity and this is what you say. So how do you live that? How do you live that out? And as soon as he asked me, I was like, this is what it is. Like, this is living intentionally. And I pulled up a quote that always resonates me from Reverend Bill Gardner. And it says, we all have 2 religions, the religion we talk about and the religion we live. And it is our task to make the difference between the 2 as small as possible. And so when you ask me what's intentional living, it's like, it's living intentionally, living mindfully of that which we want to do, that which we believe we want to do, and that which we actually are doing. And to try to really align those 2. It's like, I believe in the inherent worth and dignity of everyone. I think that you have value. And you listening, I don't even know who you are. You have worth and value. Now, how do I live that? How do I show that in what I'm doing? And how do I fail? And then how do I come back into living that? Is that enough? I mean, I'm.
It's beautiful. That's an awesome start to get us going here. Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally. All right. Well, this is going to be fun. I can tell already.
Good.
So what does it mean for you, sir? What does it look like for you to live intentionally?
Yeah, for me to live intentionally, and it changes so much. I mean, this past year of the pandemic, before I would say, oh, my living intentionally is making sure that when I'm coaching someone at the gym, I'm really focusing on their goals and their strengths and their weaknesses to help them grow into a better person. And then my living intentionally at a church, either preaching or pastoral care, working with a group or a person, and saying like, how do I comfort and challenge this person, this group, myself into being our best selves? And then, of course, the pandemic hit, and well, gyms were not open. My ministry was very different at that point, and I was home then with my two children. And so then, what does it look like to live intentionally with my children, whom I love, and whom also are their children? And they're not my peers, and we don't support each other in the same ways that peers or friends or colleagues might. I'm sure everyone can imagine that. And it's taking the intentionality, it's taking that faith, taking what I want to do with my life and really trying and striving as hard as I can to live it. So even when I'm really frustrated, which, you know, that can happen to anyone, that happens to everyone. We get frustrated with life, with the stuff that comes up. It's like, oh my gosh, I have more emails to go through. I have laundry. You can't see. Well, if you're listening, you can't see, or if you're watching, you can't see, but there's a pile of laundry behind me. And then I have a child here who wants a snack, who wants support, who wants love, which I want to do. But like, there's all this stuff, all this life comes up, and the life comes up and it sort of holds us back from living our life, which is silly, but true, is that life holds us back from life. And so my living intentionally for me would be, now how can I still be intentional in my life? How can I let go of things that I do not want to or cannot do, hold on to things which I must do or want to do, and do that in a faithful way, in an intentional way, and hopefully in a grounded way where I can be supportive of, to me, my wife, my children, and those around me.
Yeah. Do you have a, for instance, where you catch yourself maybe out of alignment and you have a tip or a trick or a method that gets you back?
Sure. Yeah, I have a couple. I mean, the large, a sort of large picture and immediate picture. So for me to continue to try to be grounded, because I'm not going to say I continue to be grounded. It's like it's constantly coming back to that, is to go and take care of myself. And what that has meant in the recent past is in the weekends when I have time, because usually in the morning I get up, I have a little bit of time. I like to exercise to get some work in. I have been coaching at University of Delaware at the CrossFit gym. So I coach there in the morning. I come back and help with children the rest of the day while my wife is at work. And then, but that's sort of stopgap. And then on the weekends, like, I need some me time. And so what I've been doing, and how you and I crossed paths recently, was I would go out to White Clay Creek and just go running for a while. And like, when I mean a while, I mean like 4 or 5 hours. It's like I would just go for
a while
for a marathon plus, because I'm like, I just need some me time to be in the woods, maybe to listen to an audiobook, maybe just to be in the woods for a while. And that's, for me, how I can get more grounded with myself and more grounded with something larger than myself that I'm not getting as much when I'm at home so much. Now, that being said, that's not for everyone, of course. And also it's not only is it not for everyone, like the exercising, but it's not for everyone, is that not everyone has that opportunity to go and take that space or that time. And what I do in the moment, sometimes I just got to walk away. It's like, if I know that I'm in a bad place and that I am either at the point of yelling at, almost all my framework now is going to be with children.
Sure. So current state.
Yeah. As we know, I can only speak from my experiences. So if I'm with my children and I find myself like, I'm going to be yelling, and if I have the presence of mind, because that doesn't always happen, but if I have the presence of mind to say like, my next reaction, that thought that's going to my mouth is not going to have a good outcome, because it might, but and I might not notice that, but if I notice it, I can stop myself. At worst, just walk away, just be like, make sure my kids are safe, and just walk away. Like, I need some time, I need space. At best, to recognize it, to say, look, I'm really sorry, I shouldn't have raised my voice. I love you. I want the best for you. And even though we might not be able to like talk about right now, do you need a hug? something where we can stop me and stop the situation. Is that and that I think is living intentionally for me, living mindfully, living in support of that love, which I want to be giving my children.
Yeah.
But when I talk about it, it sounds like I get frustrated with them all the time. That's not the case, but I'm just thinking of those moments.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that it sounds like it happens all the time. It probably happens more than you wish it would, right? I think that could be true of all of us. A couple things I noticed you saying were the ideas of noticing and recognizing. Mm-hmm. It seems to be one of the first steps.
Yeah.
In either adjusting or recalibrating or just frankly living intentionally is noticing when blank, noticing when you're feeling off or noticing when someone is in need of something. How do you work on that?
Yeah, that's key. The key there is, I've always used the term mindfulness, of being mindful of what you're doing, what you're thinking. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about this, and I come from a religious framework. So when we talk about our spirituality, our faith, it's really taking the time to be aware of what that is, because a lot of people, and especially in our culture, I'm going to use a stereotype, but a lot of people in our culture, if I said, "What is your faith?" they're like, "I don't, spiritual, not religious." That's a standard answer, and I'm not going to say that's bad, but I'm saying like, well, yes, or yes, but you have a belief, whatever that belief is, not what your belief isn't. So some people might say, I'm atheist. It's like, okay, that's what you don't believe in, but I want to know what you do believe in, what you hold true. And I think it's that work. It's that work of saying, what do I hold as the most important? What do I hold as that kernel that keeps me going? Is it family?
Yeah.
Is it nature? Is it God or Jesus? It could be. Is it connecting with someone? And that answer can be anything. It can be anything. And that, I think it's that work that we all need to do, of like coming to terms, coming to mindfulness, coming to awareness of what we believe and what we want to be, who we want to be. And I've done, mm-hmm. Professionally, I've done more work around this personally too, because that's my job. That's what I've sort of been trained to do. And so like, I feel like I have training not only in looking at myself, but also in expressing those sort of deep ideas. And so that's what I would say to me and to others, is saying, well, if you want to be aware of when you're not living in it, you have to know what it is. So you have to really take that time and be like, well, who am I? What do I want to do? Am I living into my true and best self? What's holding me back? Some very some boundaries can be unsurmountable. Some are just, well, I haven't recognized or lived into. Some could be, well, I don't have the finances to live my belief, but what could I do that could help me work more into it? And so I think it's doing that work of mindfulness, doing that work of self-reflection to know where you want to be, who you want to be.
So words you haven't said yet, that are the words that I often use in this instance, is talking about core values. Mm-hmm. Would you use those?
Yeah, I think absolutely. And I think that's really just the different framework we're coming from. So like life coach versus minister. Yeah. Core values is what I would say is your faith.
Yeah.
And what those core values are, I would guess, and I know I get pushback from people. I've had pushback from many people who would say, well, I'm not religious. How dare you tell me I have a faith? I say, well, but what you label as core values, I might say like, oh, wow, you have a core value of treating people kindly. Interesting. Okay, that sounds like, to me, mm-hmm. a faith statement too. Yeah. So yeah, core values.
So how do you, when people say, the one response to what is your faith is, oh, I'm not religious, or I'm not. For people who maybe haven't considered it, what do you recommend? Mm-hmm.
I recommend getting through that, like what you aren't. And what I really like is again, I'll reiterate, living your faith, like getting out there, like everyday experiences. How does that look spiritual? I like looking at boxes of food. Bet you didn't see that one coming, right?
Yeah, I'm intrigued.
Yeah. And all this, all natural, organic, vegan, keto, paleo. If you look at those food boxes, they almost all of them have this list of no food, no eggs, no dairy, no nuts, free of this, free of that. And like, yeah, that's wonderful. But like, what are you? So you're defining yourself against everything else. So the food I look at, I'm like, it's such a classic example of what often people do too. It's like, well, I'm not this, I'm not this, I'm not this. I have no nuts, I have no dairy, I have no allergens, I have no. It's like, yeah, that's wonderful. But what are you? Like, what are you? And so what I would say is, take the time to go through that. Like, go through like, okay, I'm atheist. I don't believe in a God. I don't believe in heaven or hell. It's like, okay, that's wonderful. Get all that out, and then come to so what do you believe in? And even start with things that might seem a little silly. It's like, oh, I believe in happiness. Like, okay, good. For you, for someone else, the right to do that, and explore those. After we've put aside that what you aren't, really try to focus on what you are. And that's what, for me, I'd say that's your religion. And whether or not that term, I know that term has a lot of baggage, whether or not you're part of an organized group or not, and that's your faith, that's your spirituality. And what I love to do is push people and say, reclaim that language, because so often there are faiths, religions, ministers who take language and they define it and they say, this is what it means for everyone. God is a classic term. It's like, God is this term, and it's Christian, and it's this old white bearded guy in the throne up in the clouds, and that's God. And people are like, I don't believe in God. It's like, okay, well, you don't believe in that as a God, but God as an unknowing feeling of connectedness. I mean, there's a Martin Buber, he's a Jewish theologian. I may get this wrong, but he was saying that God, when two people connect authentically, God is the spark between them. It's like, okay, that to me means a lot more than saying some old white guy in the sky. And yeah, the term has a lot of baggage. So it's really like reclaiming the terms. And then when you talk with someone, you say, actually, when my wife and I were dating, it was funny. We got in these conversations. I was in seminar, so it makes sense we get in like deep theological conversations. We were talking about God. And I said, I believe in God. And she says, I don't believe in God. And then we talked more about it. And we found that our beliefs were almost the exact same. Only the label was different.
The label was off, yeah.
So we were talking about the essence of life and the birds and the cicadas singing. I mean, that, an unknown force of nature that is looking to propagate, I don't know about love, but life, definitely a force of life, nature, relationships. Someone says there's no God there, and someone says, no, that is God.
All right. I mean, this is all well and good, but what about the folks that aren't trained at the seminary, right? And and you say, take some time to consider what you are, reclaim what you are instead of what you're not. How?
That's good. No, that's really good. And I think with community, so like a conversation like this with you, a friend, with someone who you trust, someone you can be vulnerable and open with, to say, hey, you know what? I was thinking about this idea I had. You want to meet however you can safely now? you want to grab a tea in the park, or sit somewhere, or come over, have a meal, and talk about it, and like bounce ideas back and forth. I mean, that's I think how we do it. We have to do it in community. We have to do it with others, because if not, then it's just going to be spinning around and around, not getting any feedback, not getting any. I've been really into accountability recently, and not having any accountability, not just as punitive, but accountability saying, hey, Joe, that's great. That's really working for you. And you know what I see that you're saying, but you're not really talking about is this part. So when you say, yeah, you're seminary trained, but how do you do that for someone who has no grounding in this? That's you holding me accountable. And that's what we need, because I would just, without you, I would just go on and say, well, just take some time and think about it. And you're like, no, yeah, that's wonderful. And so this is exactly what we need. We're sort of embodying, we're living what I think is the crux, is being in community with someone, with someone's. Yeah.
So some ingredients on this cereal box of success would be community, would be accountability, would be vulnerability, noticing.
Yeah. I think mindful. I mean, I would say mindfulness, but noticing.
Mindfulness, right?
It may have one of those big stickers that says does not include what it doesn't include.
Right.
It does not include any.
It probably would.
Yeah, it does not include anything that we're going to label as not including. That does,
right. There's no gluten probably in that cereal box of truth. Yeah.
oh yeah. Yeah.
My next question, I'm not sure how to transition into it, but it has to do with a change in habit that for you has had an exponential payoff.
Mm-hmm. Change in my habits have exponential payoff. I think getting into the physical fitness and getting into a community, I think has been the exponential payoff. I lived in Ann Arbor many years ago, and I've been active in my life for a long time, but I was doing some youth ministry and working at a homeless shelter, and I started going to a gym there. And I've never gone to a gym. I think I'm not it's the same sort of thing. It's like I'm not a gym person. I'm not a person that goes to these groups.
Yeah.
And CrossFit, talk about weird pushback. I mean, like religion, spirituality, CrossFit. I mean, these are things that people are going to hear that term and be like, turn off, shut off, because it has these connotations and these group settings. But like for me, that group, it was a CrossFit gym that I joined. That became my community of support. That became my spiritual home. Even though we didn't hardly talk about spirituality. We talked about how to be better, how to improve. We talked about commitment to something, and it was that which has really helped me. And now 11, 12 years later, I still seek out gym communities, whereas for the majority of my life, I had not, and I did not want to be in a gym. I just do my own thing. And now it's that community, which for me has really helped through hard times, good times. It's being with other people. And as a minister, I'm in an odd place where going to a church, if I'm serving there, it's not the same sort of community. It is a community of support, but it's one in which I am employed or I'm working or I have a different relationship, a little bit similar to maybe a therapist or a coach. Is like when I coach at a gym, it's a different relationship than when I'm in a class with others. When I'm preaching at a church, it's different than when I'm there in the congregation. So that's
a different role.
Yeah, definitely a different role. So it was great to find that community that I was in and being served rather than when I was serving.
Mm-hmm. And how did you, or what would you recommend to folks who don't have this sense of community, either in a gym setting or in a setting where they might feel vulnerable to share the thoughts spinning around in their head?
Yeah, that's a tough one. Advice I've given before is to find something you really enjoy, whatever it is. It's like find something you really like doing and then look for where other people are that are doing that. And that can be anything. I mean, I know people who really get into online gaming. It's like, well, look for those online gaming sites that have communities, because there are communities of online gamers, and that can be your community of support. I mean, you can have some really, really close and deep connections without ever having sort of physically met somebody. And especially now during the pandemic, as we're in the tail end, hopefully, we still are seeing this connectivity over the internet and virtually. But whatever it is that you like to do you like to read, drink coffee, play video games, go running, exercise, think about theology, write poetry? It's like whatever it is, I would recommend, if I were to give you a recommendation, is like find others who like doing that. Because then you already have something in common. Mm-hmm. And you're like, hey, I like to read books too.
Right.
You do? Great. Tell me about it. And then you can get deeper from there. Of course, relationships, you can't just come in and say, hey, you know what? I had this view about God. It's like, whoa, hey, no. Start off, you'll get there, maybe, and maybe you won't. And that's okay.
Yeah. So you just try. You lean into it a little bit and see where it goes.
Yeah. That's my advice on that.
Yeah. Nice. What have you said no to that has made a significant impact in your life?
I'm going to look right in my drawer here. I got this. I used to have this on my desk. It moved to my drawer. I think I need to bring it back. My wife gave me this. It's a rock. And it says on one side, it says yes. Guess what it says on the other side?
Ooh.
Yeah, look at that. It says no.
It says no. And
it's to help with being mindful of being intentional about what you are taking on in your life. Because there are some things you can, I'm going to put it down on my desk right now. Some things you can take on and some things that that you might not want to. And so it's a reminder of saying, I'm at capacity right now. I've got to say no. I've got to stop this. Or, hey, you know what? I'm feeling really good. If someone asks me something, if my friend Joe says, hey, do you want to be on this podcast? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe if I had this rock up this way, maybe I wouldn't have said yes. I mean, if I had it saying no, it's a way of being intentional, of being mindful, not that everything that comes my way is a yes or a no, but that I take a moment and look and be like, oh, that's right. I put that reminder that I'm feeling that I'm at capacity, which I haven't answered your question yet. So what have I said no to? That's a good one. I mean, that's a really good one. There was, I tell people to be vulnerable. So I had a departure from a church a number of years ago. Actually, I was serving a church here, and then we split ways. And it wasn't a really great departure, which is too bad for the congregation, for me. And through that, there's a process of accountability from my national organization. And they had this accountability structure of what I need to do to stay in good standing, the steps I need to take. And it was getting to the point. It was a long process, and I like the accountability. I've talked about that. It's like I want to be in good relationship with others. I want to be in good standing, and it got to a point where I could not keep going without making sort of unjust demands upon myself. I was just starting to be at home with my two children. I was trying to find my way in my now more community-based ministerial calling of pulpit supply and pastoral support and coaching, and the tasks that were given were not fitting into where I was going. And so I got to a point where I said, no. And the no was, I'll come back to this. It wasn't a no, we're done burning bridges. It was saying, no, it's not happening at this point in my life. It's not going to continue. I cannot, in good faith, continue in this process. And so I said, no. It's a sort of nebulous, but I'm hesitant to be very, very specific just because it's part of the process. But I think that's one that really has. And having that very painful time, but also a time when I can let go of something. And I say, like, I don't have to hold that. I may come back to it, but right now I don't have to hold that.
I think that's a really good point. One of the points is that it doesn't have to be a forever no.
Yeah, that's right.
But noticing it's definitely a no right now. It's coming up against something that, for me to be who I want to be, it's a no.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that. And you don't have to be more specific than that. What area in your life feels just about perfect?
That's good. You spent some time on these questions, haven't you?
I was intentionally thoughtful about these questions. Yeah.
Are you embodying what you're talking about?
Gosh, I try.
Just about perfect. And I love this. I love the framework, because when you're chatting with someone, be it in a pastoral, friendly relationship, anything, it's really great to go back to the positive framework. It's like, what's going well? What has gone well? What is perfect in your life right now? What is perfect? I think my family. I'd say my family. My professional life is, it's sporadic at best. I mean, it's sporadic at best. It's not where I'd want it to be. It's not where I planned it to be. My family of origin and my family now, it's like, that's the perfect spot. And that's sort of logistic and supportive, loving wise. Memorial Day, just last weekend, we were all the adults are vaccinated, so we went camping for a long weekend. It was wonderful. So it was my parents, my siblings, their kids, my kids. It was really, really nice.
Yeah, that sounds just about perfect.
And that is, yes, taking into consideration what I've said before about being home with kids and that being tiring sometimes. I would still say the family.
What if I could circle back? I had asked the question about what have you said no to that has made a significant impact, right? And I really appreciate your thoughtful answer. I'm wondering if I framed it in this way, if you might have a different answer or it would be similar. What major decision have you made in your life has made a significant impact?
Those would probably be more yeses than nos, but that's what I'll go with. I mean, there are of course, some sort of the classic, like going to college where I did, because that's where I met my wife.
Yeah.
The sort of unknown, like, well, who knew that was going to happen? I spent a lot of time volunteering with Habitat for Humanity in Hungary. That was a huge stepping stone in my life. That was right after college. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. Most people, I know some people who have been in that situation. I was like, I'm done my undergrad. Now what? I went to Hungary and I volunteered for 6 months, building houses and building community. And through that, I was like, I need to be in a place where I'm helping people create a better world. And I came back and I entered into seminary and Master of Social Work program. And I was like, this is what I'm going to do. I need to do something where I am helping create a better world, and not just me, because it's not about me. It's about a community. It's about something bigger than me. So that probably has been one of the most formative decisions in my life. And returning to Hungary a couple of times with the same organization and the same people.
That sounds like a great experience.
Yeah, truly was.
Who is someone you admire,
yeah.
And what do you admire about them?
I have in my when I had an out of home office, I had pictures of some people on the wall. They were sort of my heroes. One was my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, and she was so strong in a very, she was very strong. She had arthritis from her 20s up through the rest of her life, which was decades long. So physically very weak and vulnerable, but always strong, especially with her values and being kind to people. And I remember after she died, finding something where she was listing her New Year's resolutions, and one was to be less sarcastic. I was like, I can't think of anyone who is less sarcastic than you, but it was not to be not funny. It was to be truthful, to understand that like sarcasm has this sort of shadow side of you're hiding truth. You're not being fully truthful. And so one of her things was like, I want to constantly try to live into my best self. That was one. And then another one was a seminary professor who really helped me when I was in seminary. I went to a Presbyterian school, and I said I'm Unitarian Universalist, and we were in a class called Christology, which is the study of Christ. And for a Unitarian Universalist, we do not have a very high Christology. We don't talk about Christ much. And so in the class, we were talking about beliefs of Christ, and she said, Andrew, what do you believe? Which is so different from other professors who had said, you know what, you don't really belong here. Maybe you should be in a different school. And she would just ask me right out, what do you believe? I want everyone to learn because your belief is going to be different. And it was funny because I started the answer. I was like, well, I disagree with the sort of the premise, the title of the course. So from there, it was a learning experience, but also to show how open she was and saying she had a very strong view of Christianity and what she believed. And she knew that I was very, very, very different, that even the label Christianity probably didn't work for what I believe, but she wanted me to be able to express my beliefs and also to learn and talk with everyone else. So those are the two people that come to mind right away.
Yeah. Well, first off, I'm questioning my use of sarcasm now, considering it's some shadow of truth there. Yeah, that's very interesting. But also it sounds like your instructor, created a safe space where you could allow yourself to be vulnerable.
Yeah.
And invited you to do so. I couldn't help but noticing, though, you started off by saying that you didn't like the name of the course, right? It was a not.
Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah. So it was more that I disagree, not that I didn't like, but I disagreed because in sort of just a sort of theological, like Christology would assume the divinity, the sole divinity of Jesus. And if we're going to get into that, I would say like, well, yeah, divinity, sure. He's divine. You are divine. I am divine, which most people who hold Jesus as Christ would say, whoa, hold on. So my Christology would be, I don't agree with that term.
It's fascinating. Yeah, that's very meta. That's the response.
Yeah, it's like I was, not like I disagree with the course. I disagree with the sort of underlying. You're saying something that I'm not the same with. Yeah.
Well, anyone naming courses, be aware that Andrew is going to take you to task. Make sure it's very intentional.
Well, yeah, if you're going to allow a Unitarian Universalist in your Presbyterian seminary, you might have some difference.
Yeah.
Just saying.
What do you imagine some people admire about you?
I think my dedication to what I believe in. I've heard that, and I tried to live intentionally. I tried to live mindfully. I was telling right before we started recording, I was saying I have a blog called How to Drive Like a Minister, and the whole thing, it's like my whole message is, what is your belief? Okay, so how do you live that? As in, like, how do you drive your beliefs? When you get in the car, when you get on your bicycle, when you go out for a walk, when you're buying, when you're shopping, how do you live your beliefs? How do you take that from your theological mindset into your everyday lived actions? And I believe, I hope, and I believe that that's something people see in me, that I say I have these beliefs, but that even louder than I say them is that I live them. Because that's what I think is the most important. It's not that I'm saying, I believe in this and this and this, but that you can look at me and see how I live and be like, oh, I know what this guy believes. I know what he holds as valuable, and it's coming through in how he acts and how he lives.
Right. Regardless of if they have heard you say these things or not, they can see it.
Yeah. Regardless if they've heard, oh, I know because he's told me this. They're like, no. I just see how he acts, how he walks and talks.
Yeah. I can attest to that as someone who sees you and has seen you.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, even more specifically, the way we met is, at the CrossFit gym. Yes, but it wasn't actually I who was participating in CrossFit at the time. It was my son, and you were coaching him, and it was just very clear by the way you were interacting with not just the kids, but the parents and everyone around you that you walk the walk. So that was very clear.
Yeah.
Wondering if there's anything that we haven't touched on that you'd like to bring up, or circle back to any questions that we talked about earlier.
Can I ask you a question? Is that valid? Is that allowed?
Yeah, unless I don't like it, and then
you just have it cut out. It's like, and the last
we'll just edit it out. Yeah.
Oh, I guess.
Yeah. And that's all the time we have for today. Please.
So you pushed me in saying, I didn't hear you say core values. So when I talk with you and I see your work and your life, I don't hear faith language. And I'm curious.
Right.
I'm curious. Don't tell me, oh yeah, I go to church every week. I don't care. You go to church every week. I want to know about your faith and how that is living through your work, through your life.
Yeah. So in recent years, I'd say probably when I started getting into coaching and learning about coaching process and languaging, and actually, interestingly or not, prior to getting into coaching and academic advising, I studied foreign language. And so just always been very interested in languages and the power of language and the words we use. And, I was raised religiously. I certainly have that as a foundation with my moral beliefs and my moral compass. But I have found in my experience with religion that sometimes it can be limiting, right? To your point earlier of the image that is often represented as God, right?
Yeah.
I find that happens a lot.
Yeah.
And not so much from the people giving the message, but from the people who believe in it, right? Mm-hmm. So fellow members of the same faith, right? They'll take that simple idea and not challenge it, not go deeper, not maybe even apply it to themselves, but just kind of, well, that's what it is, right? God's in the sky. That's just what it is. I'm not going to go any deeper. And so I found that when I've moved away from that language, and for me, I'm talking around it, but the reason I'm doing so is because it's so individual with the person that I'm talking with.
Yeah.
Right. So if I'm talking with you, and you're speaking from a religious standpoint, I will tend to go shift into that language because that's what you connect with, right? However, if someone who is outside of that, or someone who is their frame of reference is totally different, I try to connect with that. And so if you're asking, so you haven't heard me reference it because I don't typically default to that anymore.
Yeah.
But also on a personal level, just strictly personal, I am less faith-centric, right, as far as a particular canon of religion these days, and more about energy, more about the universe, right? If I'm going to label something, gosh, one of my personal philosophies about people in general is that everyone is doing the best they can at any given point in time, and I often use that as a lens as I interact with the world. Mm-hmm. And that helps me when I see someone like cutting me off in traffic, or I see like just some real negative behavior. I'm like, what the heck, right? Like previously, they need some Jesus in their life or something. But and now it's like, gosh, something like, I'm so glad that I am in a place where I am right now. I am so glad I had a calm morning this morning. Like clearly that person is something going on. Yeah, sorry, that's where the question took me.
No, thank you. That's exactly, I feel like that is, as I would say, driving like a minister. It's like you're living your values and you're saying, when I see someone else doing something which hurts, angers, frustrates, confuses me, I think I don't understand what they're going through, and I can assume best intentions, assume they're doing what they can. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, I assume that they're doing their best. And again, sometimes someone's best is not always good enough. That's the other key learning I've had.
Yeah, there's the accountability.
Sometimes that's not good enough. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm sorry, but that happens. We are human.
Yeah,
you have to give someone an opportunity to atone to whatever. You have to give them.
There's that religious language
within reason. No, sorry, that slipped in. That's because you've been rubbing off on me.
No, I think
language is important, though, right? Yeah. It is. It's absolutely important.
And that's. I'm going to keep going. You can cut it when you need to, but this is. I feel like it's so true in child rearing too. As you know, with your child, and I know with my children, is that there are some times when your best is not good enough, and that's where love and atonement, as you said, I say redemption. Redemption comes in. If there's no possibility for coming back into relationship, that's what I'd say is redemption. It's like, if there's no possibility for coming back, then it's not useful. There was a movie, The Butterfly Effect. I come to this movie a lot because I think it's terrible, actually. The Butterfly Effect, where someone was time traveling through their own life and trying to fix mistakes, but making things worse. And the outcome of the movie, if this is a spoiler, so if you want to watch it, just mute for a little bit.
Yeah, I think this movie came out a good 20, maybe 30 years ago. It's an Ashton Kutcher vehicle. Yeah.
Okay, spoiler alert for a decades old movie. Is that the end of the movie is the outcome is that the world would have been better had this person not lived. And in my mind, that is not redemptive. And that's why I think the movie's terrible. Because, maybe well done, I guess really well done, because it's made me think about it and constantly come up. So maybe it's a wonderful movie.
Effective. Yeah.
But the fact that the outcome is, it would have been better without you living. In my mind, that is not redemptive. That is not saying, you know what, there was this place where you could have atoned. You did wrong. We can try better. We can try again, and we can still come back to that. More recent, Black Panther, another one. Mm-hmm. Black Panther's father's brother, right? Father's brother, if you know the movies, he dies and he is not accepted in the afterlife into the place where all the kings are. That, in my view, is a huge failing of that movie. I like the movie. I love it. I don't know about love. Those are strong terms. I like the movie. Very enjoyable. But to say that because of something this person did, they are not accepted into this, essentially that's saying heaven. They're not going to the place where their ancestors are. I do not agree with that. To say that that's where the redemption falls apart. That's where the universalist part of my Unitarian Universalism comes from. It's like, there's always room for redemption. There's always room for us getting back into a relationship with you, being in a relationship with the holy, with whatever you see that is. If there is a hell, it is empty. That's my view. It's like, if there is a hell, if there's something after life that is not good, then there's no one there, because there's always a place for us to come back. The redemption is universal. So if you watch Black Panther, if you know what I'm talking about, or if you need to rewatch it, the part where he says, "Oh, he's not going to join us," is like, no. He can still be there, despite any mistake. You are not defined by your worst mistake.
That's a very refreshing view. What am I thinking? I'm thinking that many people feel that way. That's why it ended up in a movie, because it's relatable.
Yeah. Well, and it's tough because of movies, of course. I mean, they have to be entertaining and they have to be relatable, and it feels quite good for a movie and for an audience to say that person did wrong. We're gonna get them. It's like, yeah, I get it. And
vengeance or justice. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's that side of justice. Like but it doesn't have to be that way. And we can get into like, what's the point of the justice system? Punishment?
Oh gosh,
redemption.
Let's hold. That's a whole other
a whole other thing.
How about that's part 2? That has to be a part 2, because I think I could see where you and I could go for a while on that.
But that's it. I mean, with movies, with life, it's like, if you're just going to punish someone. So, I mean, with children, if my child does something wrong and I say, you're getting punished, it's like, okay, so what's my hopeful outcome? Where are we coming back into a relationship? Because I better be having a space where my child and I can come back into a relationship. I mean, I just bet that's just bad parenting if I don't. But then for life, for me and someone else, we're saying, how can we come back into a relationship? How can we redeem this? How can we work through it? Not just that you're punished, that you did something wrong, not just that I'm punished, that I did something wrong. Accountability has love. Redemption has possibility of connections. That's it. That's all I got. I don't know what else to say.
That's not all you got, but I think that's all we got for this episode of Intentionally
for now.
Ever After. Yeah, I've taken a bunch of notes of things that I would love for our next conversation. Thank you for your consideration of all these things. This is great. I'm really glad that that I ran into you, or ran past you, as it were. And
hopefully we didn't run into each other, but we did. Cross.
Yeah, no. Let that be clear. We did manage to not run into each other, but I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing your views and your perspectives and your wisdom.
Well, thank you. I hope this has been useful for you, useful for someone. It's been useful for me. So
awesome. Well, then that's what I care about, and I know by extension it will be useful for others as well. Okay. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
This has been Intentionally Ever After, hosted by intentional lifestyle coach Joe Bukartek. If you would like to have your own intentional conversation with Joe on or off the air, visit intentionallyeverafter.com. Thanks for listening.
Yeah.